وين العرب؟ وين العرب؟
وين العالم؟ وين الدول العربية؟ الدول العربية ومصر. احنا تعبنا. أنا غزة من غزة الآن ماشي.
وين الناس؟ وين حكام العرب؟
Why aren't more Arab countries in the Middle East taking in Palestinian refugees?
Why does nobody want Palestinian refugees? It's true. And specifically, why has every Arab country rejected sheltering any refugees from Gaza?
What if I told you that some of the richest and most powerful Arab countries, nations built on the promise of brotherhood and unity, are refusing to open their doors to Gaza's refugees? Thousands are fleeing bombs, borders remain shut, and the world is asking, why? But here's the twist. It's not because they can't help, it's because they won't. Let's uncover the truth no one wants to say out loud. To understand today's silence, we have to go back to 1948, the year Israel was born. In the year, over 700,000 Palestinians were forced to flee their homes. They ran, hoping to return, but most never did. Many Palestinians settled in neighboring countries like Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria after being displaced in 1948, with the belief that their exile would be short-lived, that one day they would go home. But that return never came. As years turned into decades, the temporary became permanent, but their legal status did not. In most host countries, Palestinians were not granted full citizenship. This wasn't simply about compassion or the lack of it. It was about politics and demographic fear. As a result, generations of Palestinians were left in limbo. No national ID, no passport, no permanent home. Now, fast forward to today, Gaza is burning once again. Airstrikes, blockades, desperation. And yet, the border to Egypt, the Rafah crossing, remains mostly shut. Why? It's not just about managing a border or processing refugees. It's about something much more fragile and far more dangerous. Sinai. North Sinai, the vast desert on Egypt's eastern frontier, has long been a hotspot for Islamist insurgency. For over a decade, the Egyptian military has battled extremist groups affiliated with ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It's one of the most militarized zones in the country, full of checkpoints, surveillance, and constant tension. Now imagine adding tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands, of desperate Gazans to that volatile region. Egypt fears the chaos could be exploited, that Hamas fighters, weapons, and radical ideologies could slip through. Under the guise of refugees, this isn't just a humanitarian dilemma, it's a national security nightmare. But there's another layer, one even more politically explosive. Egypt fears that if Gazans are allowed in, they might never leave. That temporary refuge could quietly turn into a permanent settlement, and that leads to the ultimate red line. The fear that part of Sinai could become a de facto Palestinian state. For Egypt, that's not an option. Because if Gaza's people are resettled in Sinai, the world might stop pushing for a two-state solution. Israel could walk away unchallenged, and Egypt, already struggling economically, would be left holding the burden of a displaced nation. Now shift your focus to Jordan, a country already carrying the weight of a complex demographic reality. Over half of Jordan's population today is of Palestinian origin. That's not a small number. It's a national identity. Jordan didn't just host refugees once. It absorbed wave after wave. In 1948, when the State of Israel was born, in 1967 after the Six-Day War, and again during every major flare-up in Gaza and the West Bank. But each of those waves came with a cost. It wasn't just food, shelter, and jobs. It was about balancing power between the native Jordanian tribes and the incoming Palestinian communities. It was about redefining what it means to be Jordanian. And tensions didn't stay beneath the surface. In 1970, those pressures erupted into a full-scale internal conflict, a civil war between the Jordanian army and Palestinian factions, especially the PLO. It was a brutal chapter in Jordan's history, known as a Black September, where the state nearly collapsed under the weight of political violence and competing loyalties. From that moment on, Jordan drew a clear line. It learned that absorbing refugees isn't just about offering safety, it's about maintaining political balance, preserving national identity, and ultimately ensuring survival. Lebanon's situation is even more fragile. This is a country built on a delicate sectarian balance between Sunnis, Shias, Christians, and Druze. Power is divided not by merit, but by religious identity. Now imagine adding hundreds of thousands of Sunni Palestinian refugees. That doesn't just stretch resources, it threatens the entire political order. That fear came true during the Lebanese Civil War in 1975. Palestinian factions, especially the PLO, had set up armed bases inside refugee camps. To many Lebanese, they were no longer guests. They were a parallel state. The camps turned into war zones, militias clashed, and Lebanon descended into 15 years of brutal conflict. Since then, the scars haven't healed. Even today, Palestinians in Lebanon can't vote, can't own land, and face heavy job restrictions. They live in permanent limbo, decades after their arrival. And now, Lebanon is in free fall. Its economy has collapsed. Its currency has lost over 90% of its value. Public services are barely functioning. It's already hosting 1.5 million Syrian refugees, the most per capita in the world. So when it comes to Gaza, the truth is harsh. Lebanon simply cannot take more. Now let's shift the focus to the oil-rich Gulf nations. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait. They have the money, they have the infrastructure, they have global influence. So, why not open their gates to fleeing Gazans? Because the Gulf has made a different choice. Palestine is no longer their war, at least not in the way it once was. Behind the scenes, Gulf countries like the UAE and Bahrain have moved toward normalization with Israel. The Abraham Accords changed everything. In this new reality, business comes first, geopolitics second, and Arab Brotherhood? That's a footnote. Welcoming Gaza's refugees now would be more than a humanitarian move. It would be seen as a direct challenge to their growing ties with Israel. Ties built on billion-dollar trade deals, defense cooperation, and strategic U.S. backing. And there's another layer to this. Most Gulf states enforce strict population controls. Even Arab migrants who've lived there for decades, who've built the skyscrapers and staffed the hospitals, can't become citizens. So, why would Gazans be treated any differently? Then comes the most sensitive issue, Hamas. They see Hamas not as a freedom movement, but as a radical faction aligned with Iran, their regional rival. Taking in refugees from a Hamas-governed Gaza is seen as a security risk. What if militants slip through the cracks? These regimes aren't just thinking about compassion, they're thinking about survival and control. So what's the unspoken strategy? Arab nations will speak for Palestine. They will issue statements. They will send aid. They will condemn Israel on global stages. But they will not resettle Gaza's people permanently. Because to them, resettlement means surrender. It means accepting that the dream of return is dead, that Gaza may never rise again, that the Palestinian homeland may forever remain a story from the past. Wait, keeping Palestinians in Gaza, even under siege, keeps that dream alive. Scattering them across Arab capitals means letting it die. So next time someone asks, why don't Arab countries take in their Palestinian brothers? The answer isn't simple. It's a story woven with fear, power, history, and shifting loyalties. So now we ask you, has the Arab world done enough, or has fear and realpolitik silenced the very voices that once cried out for unity? Drop your thoughts in the comments.